Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and this is the show that I produce in Sydney, Australia, where I talk to leading guitarists and guitar figures from all around the world. Thank you so much for joining me. Now today I speak to Scott Salmon of Nautilus Effects. You might recall I had Scott on earlier in 2020. Scott's the mastermind behind the Australian Gear giveaway, raising money for the bushfire disaster that Australia was faced with as 2020 rolled around the corner. He raised a huge amount of money, so I wanted to get him back on the show just to catch up where that whole effort ended up, but also wanted to talk to Scott about his company Nautilus Effects, which specializes in putting together pedalboards, various rigs, and also imports some really great gear into Australia as well. So it was a very cool guitar chat. Scott's a great guy, very humble, but very knowledgeable and skilled as well. So it was very cool to have him back on the show. Let's jump straight in. Scotty Salmon, welcome back to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, mate, last time we spoke was early January. Australia was engulfed in bushfires, and you had just launched the Aussie Bushfire Gear giveaway, which pretty much just exploded right off the bat.
Yeah, it went a little crazy, didn't it?
Yeah, man. I just imagine your life was it escalated really, really quickly. I guess if people are not aware of what you were doing, I'll do the summary. Tell me if this is right. But you run Nautilus Effects, so you're well entrenched in the musical gear industry, and you wanted to put up a pedal or something for auction to try and raise some money, and then a whole bunch of other builders wanted to get on board and help out.
Yeah, pretty much. I sort of started a GoFundMe page, and I said that if anybody that donated I was gonna sort of pick a name out of a hat from those people and give away a Shinai pedal. And then some of my other suppliers and stuff saw my Instagram video, and they sort of said, "Oh, well, we'll donate something." And all of a sudden, we had like 130 pedals donated, and I was a very busy boy.
Yeah, man. It ended up being like companies from all around the world. There was JHS with Josh Scott and the Keeley, the pedal show. I'm only naming a couple, but amazing how people just got on board.
Yeah, and not just big names, but little guys too that even I'd never heard of. We had guys from Italy, Genziano. He came on board. I never heard of him, and he makes amazing stuff. Isle of Tone over there, and I'm pretty sure it's Norway. We had a greenhouse from Israel, like literally all over the world. It's just geographically everywhere.
That's unreal. So I think your goal, once you started getting a few different pedals and you thought, okay, I think one of your early goals was to raise $10,000?
Yeah, and I thought that was being a bit cheeky. I thought I initially started at 5.
Okay, yeah.
By the time I'd even actually launched the GoFundMe, I sort of thought, oh, well, maybe I'll go for 10. So I put 10 on there thinking, oh, we won't get that, but it's a good goal.
Awesome. And where did you end up?
We ended up just shy of 40. So once we got through the actual GoFundMe fees and stuff associated with doing that, we had about 37,000.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable. This is one guy putting up one pedal to auction, and then it's snowballed to that. Fantastic. Congratulations, and good on you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, let's talk about Nautilus Effects. What's the Nautilus Effects story? When did you start this company?
I think officially it became a business maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep. And what did that look like kicking off?
Kicking off, it was just basically me building pedal boards for people. So they'd bring all the gear in and I'd wire it all up, because I sort of was the only one, at least in the area, that sort of had the skills or the knowledge to be doing it. I started building my own pedal boards like 15, 20 years ago, when the only other guys doing it were like, in New York or something,
Yeah, right.
Awesome. And I had some good help early on. I'd contact guys like Mason from Vertex or Rooster from Trailer Trash Pedal Boards, and just talk shop with them because no one here was doing any of that stuff, So those guys would just give me pointers and give me sort of advice on doing it here, because obviously shipping my pedals to New York or something and having a huge pedal board shipped back was not really an option. So
Yeah, sure.
I kind of just got a bit of a leg up because I was so far away from anyone else doing it. So I just started building pedal boards for myself, and then friends that were musos would sort of see it and be like, "Oh, can you build me one?" And then I'd build their pedal board, and then I sort of ended up just getting so many people wanting me to do it that I thought, well, maybe I should structure this a little bit, which is when I started Nautilus. So I just started building pedal boards, and then over time I started retailing pedals and stuff as well. Like, it was mostly jam pedals was the catalyst for that, because I'm so into jam pedals from Greece. I just think everything they do is amazing. I'd have guys come and play my board, and they'd say, "Oh, I want a big muff. What's a good big muff?" And I'd be like, "Well, the jam pedals one is amazing." And then I just ended up, I'd be sending guys down to my mates at Deluxe Guitars 10 times a year to buy jam pedals. I just thought maybe I should contact jam pedals so I can just have them here. And and obviously power supplies was the same thing. You build 50 pedal boards a year, you need a few power supplies. So
Yeah, yeah.
the retail side of it was just something that fell into place.
So you must have been one of the only guys importing jam pedals, I guess, back then.
Yeah, I think back when I started, the only people doing it was Deluxe Guitars.
Okay, yep.
And of course, I was like a massive fanboy of jam pedals. Like, I probably had 10 of my own at the time. So
Awesome.
the jam guys sort of knew that I was, an obsessive fan kind of thing, because I'd email them and ask about things and whatever. So they sort of knew who I was.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
And that was just necessity, really. The jam came out of it. But since then, I guess the brands that I stock now, I sort of, because I've got so many friends in the industry, and there's a lot of people who feel Australia is a very saturated market because of our low population, I guess.
Yeah.
For our area, I really try my hardest to just stock brands that I kind of have exclusivity to, and not so that other people can't get them, but just as a point of difference.
Sure.
I try and
yeah.
things like Pro Analog Devices. I'm the only guy in Australia that has those, and Shine, I'm the only guy who has those. Just so that I've got something different. And I'm not a big company, so the things I stock, I really want to be things that I really, really believe in, that I know are sort of exceptional products at the top of their game. So I guess that's my little niche, is to sort of be the guy who has a couple of things that are really for the very discerning players that want those specific things.
Yeah, for sure, man. Looking at your site, yeah, you're dealing in stuff. I guess the term's a bit out of vogue now, calling stuff boutique, but the stuff you're stocking would fall into that. Into that
Yeah, for
category.
sure.
Yeah, nice, man. Like the Shino stuff is killer. That's awesome. I didn't know you were the only guy in Australia doing that.
Yeah, I'm the only guy who's ever represented Shinai or Pro Analog down here.
Awesome, man.
And now I've just taken on VS Audio, which was something I'd organised maybe 6 months before the bushfire giveaway. I had that sort of in the works. So now I've got VS Audio here from Greece, which is really amazing stuff. And it's actually crazy well priced for how good it is. It's really surprisingly good. And then other stuff, the Comet amplifiers I bring in, that's another like jam, where I bought my first Comet amp maybe a decade ago, and it completely changed the way I looked at playing guitar. It changed everything about my life as a guitar player. And for me personally, they're the only amps I'm interested in ever since, But again, crazy expensive, really high-end stuff, really small numbers of production. And it's really something that just blossomed out of kind of an existing relationship with those guys. It was just something that I absolutely was obsessed with, that I knew was the real deal, so kind of fit my business model.
Yeah, nice. And I see you've brought out your own stuff as well. I know you've recently been designing and building your own boards and importing some pedalboard backpack cases. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's been something that's sort of been another thing born out of necessity for me because um, obviously when I start doing all these pedal boards all the time, there's a lot of pedal board brands out there, but I guess builders like myself have sort of a style in which they want to do things because you fall into habits which you find are things that are reliable to do as a builder. Um, and then I would kind of find that no matter which rig I was building, if they brought their own pedal board along, there was always limitations to it. Like pedal trains are exceptionally strong and they're really really simple, but they're not really that functional to wire underneath, for example.
Hmm.
Whereas you get something else like maybe a trailer trash pedal board, where it's really great to wire with underneath, but it's not that functional to change things up on because you've kind of got to route the top yourself.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I never found anything that did everything I wanted to build with, and there was always kind of limitations to how well I could build the system based on the board it was on. So I just ended up starting to try and find someone to fabricate boards the way I wanted them. Um, and I went through a couple of different companies to get there, and it's taken a really, really long time. But I've kind of got it refined now to a design that I'm really happy with that has a bunch of different features of a bunch of different boards. And I think it's, for my personal tastes of building boards, this is what I find the most functional thing.
Nice. Now, it's probably hard to describe on a podcast what your boards look like, but what are some of the features that were important for you in designing these?
Okay, so they're really lightweight, which is one of the things because the whole trend in the market at the moment seems to be downsizing. Everybody wants to take them on planes or on carry-on, or weight's a big issue. The same reason guys are taking a fractal unit instead of a tube amp.
Hmm.
It's all about practicality mostly because of the size of venues and the availability of gigs, essentially. Um, so they're really, really lightweight, but I made a point of making sure that they were all welded properly. A lot of the boards you find that are folded, and it's purely a manufacturing thing, is they'll fold them, which gives them strength, but then they won't have corners and stuff that are welded because the actual manpower costs in welding those, they can only be done by hand and they have to be sanded and all these things. So the manufacturing cost of doing that for other companies building pedal boards is just it's not viable really. Um, but it has its own drawbacks. So I sort of decided that the boards that I wanted cost was gonna be irrelevant, and I just wanted to build them the way I wanted them built. Um, and fortunately, I've been able to get that after maybe 5 years of working on it to a point where it is kind of affordable now. It just means I have to do them in certain quantities, and I had to find the right people who wanted to do it, um, and just kind of refine the whole design. So the way that they're built is a big part of it for me. Obviously, the way they're powder coated, like I've had them powder coated in a matte because that for some reason everything just sticks better to it, than
Oh,
when they're
okay. Yep.
gloss powder coated.
Yep.
Um, they've got a whole layout on the top of them that not only is for enabling you to put your cables through the top to wire underneath or whatever, but the way I've done it is so that you can actually use that same hole layout to affix all your cabling to the board itself instead of using those little sticky things and all that. You can just cable tie all your cabling looms directly to the board.
Nice.
Um, they've got all the side jacks and stuff built into the boards, so all the holes to insert the side jacks are actually, they have proper screw threads and stuff in them and nuts welded on them and everything like that. So you can change up what panel mount jacks you have if you want XLRs for your DI or you want a USB in or whatever. They're sort of customizable to however you want them, but all that stuff is mounted in the board. It's not an external plate or something. It's all right there on the board. So um, I think that's the main part of the features.
Yeah.
Like
Cool. Sounds
everything's been
awesome.
considered, that the angle of them and the height of them, and
Yep.
it it's all deliberate.
Yeah. And do you have like one size, or you're going various sizes?
So over time, I've probably done about, in the various incarnations that I've had them, I've probably had about 10 different sizes and models, but I've refined that now just down to three, which seem to be the ones that consistently were popular, um, and were practical to make.
Yep.
So yeah, I've just got a small one, which is 45 by 31 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got a 60 by 31, and then I've got a slightly bigger one that's 60 wide, but it's deeper for 3 rows of pedals. So that's
Okay, cool.
60 by 41.5.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, they sound good. They sound like good sizes. Awesome, man.
Yeah,
Very
I
cool.
did used to do a lot of really big ones, but like I said, the trend is guys downsizing, and every time I do a really huge monster board, the guys love it, but then they eventually come back a year later and go, you know what, it's too much effort. Let's do something smaller, and you just go, yeah, well,
Yeah. Yeah, and it depends where you're getting. Oh, I had a season when I was doing lots of weddings, and I had a massive board, and
yeah,
you'd be in the corner of a restaurant or something, and the amount of times I actually had to literally just pull a couple of pedals off the board and stick them in my little corner.
yeah.
I thought, man, maybe I don't need a massive board for all this stuff.
You need 2 pedal boards. That's that's how it works.
That's the next step. That's a good excuse. I should have thought of that.
Yeah, I do a lot of that actually. I'll have guys that will have the board that lets them have fun, and then the board that is practical. You
Yeah,
know.
right. Nice. What apart from size, I guess then, you talked about downsizing. What other trends have you seen over the years of building this stuff?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, obviously you get. It's funny being in a fairly pedal specific corner of the industry. I guess it always comes back to pedals, but you see things like the modeling and all that kind of stuff that comes around. And from someone in my position, it's interesting because you see on the world stage, the modeling stuff is really taking over and getting super popular. But for me, every time I do a board with a modeler on it, the guy comes back 6 months later and just wants his pedals back, you know?
Okay, yeah.
So that's one thing I think is a trend that isn't a trend in a way, you know, like I guess the guys that are into pedals are really into pedals because of what they are and how artistic they are and how creative they are. And, you know, they're almost like Tamagotchis for guitar players, you know, you got to catch them all. So I think pedals are here for the long haul.
Yeah.
The trends, even with pedals, though, is about smaller, more compact stuff. You know, guys don't want a deluxe memory man that's, 25 centimeters wide. They want something that's got functionality in a small footprint. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
The last 2 years, I think there's been a huge move towards pedals with presets on board, like the Chase Bliss stuff, the Meris stuff, Strymon, all of that.
Yeah.
But even in the more simple analog circuits, like the VS Audio guys have got pedals that are in the same small enclosures as, say, like an MXR pedal, but they've got like they're all analog modulation pedals, but then they've got presets in that as well. So people being able to get away with using TRS for MIDI and stuff has been really helpful in that side of things, which is cool. So I think functionality is the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Globally in the guitar world at the moment is people just need things to be more functional than they've previously been, you know.
Yeah. What about loop switches? Has that become part of your board?
Yeah, I mean I've got an RJM switcher on my board personally.
Okay, yeah.
I've been big on the loop switches for a long time, so I think it's hard for me to say how much more popular they are. I don't necessarily think there's that many more people using them than there was 10 years ago comparatively. But I could be wrong. I still think probably 75% of the boards I build don't have them.
Okay, yeah.
But they're a lot more widely known about. I think Dan with the gig rig switches has brought them to a lot of people's attention, you know. But they've been around for a decade before Dan was doing them, you know. So they're nothing new, but they're getting better, I suppose, is the thing. They're more in depth for sure.
Sure, yeah. How about these are some arguments or debates I've seen, which I don't know if they're still a common thing. Patch cables, solderless versus soldered. What's your take?
Well, here's one you're going to get a real opinion on because
Cool.
as a builder, sorry, my dogs are going nuts in the background.
No worries. We're dog friendly here on the Guitar Speak podcast.
Yeah, my wife's just taking them out for a walk, so they're all excited. Okay, so the solderless thing, I spent probably 5 years going through every type of solderless connector I could find because I kept hearing all this hype about them, the George L's and stuff,
Yeah.
And I thought, geez, that's so practical for someone in my line of work. And I bought and sold absolutely everything, and every one of them I thought was rubbish. I just there was always issues with grounding and shorting and things like just poorly designed things with set screws that you could use once, and then as soon as you try and undo it, it's all burred out because they're not hard enough metal, and there was just always all these detractions from it. So for a long time, I swore against solderless. I was like, I'm just not doing it. It's not reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And then my buddy Jack up at JH Productions said, man, you got to try Evidence Audio. So he sent me down a few, and as far as I'm concerned, they are as reliable and they sound better than absolutely anything else on the market, soldered or not. So I would not, by choice, use anything other than Evidence Audio on a pedal board.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know whether that's whether people think that's a trustworthy recommendation, being that I'm the dealer in this part of the country for it, but they just completely changed the way I built boards.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever had one fail on me, and I would have put 10,000 of them on pedal boards. Just the way he's designed them is completely different to how any other ones are designed. The center pin is a solid core, and it screws into the connector itself. So the actual center pin connection, the hot connection, is actually screwed in with a thread. It's not.
Oh, okay.
It's not like resting in a thing by force.
Yeah.
And then they have no set screws, which is the big thing. The way they work is that the center pin is held in firm, and then the ground wire, which is a braid, is basically constantly making contact with the shell of the connector. So there's no set screws to come out or go loose. And you can't short them without really, really trying. Like, you physically can't separate this connector by hand without deliberately breaking it. So for me, there's no reliability issue there for shorting. It's almost impossible. And then the fact that Tony was some kind of nutty genius working in some kind of engineering thing. I don't remember the story off the top of my head where he was. It was literally like NASA or something, though. So he came up with his own composite types of metals and stuff that he wanted to use in his cabling. And whatever he's done is just genius, because it just sounds absolutely incredible. I've done blind tests with other guys that sell high-end cables, and Tony's cheapest cables have beat out the most expensive things guys can get their hands on when they don't know what they're listening to, So I'm a big advocate for the Evidence Audio stuff. I just think it's absolute game-changing stuff. So that's my take on soldered versus solderless.
Yeah, cool.
The answer from me is soldered all the way, except for Evidence Audio.
Okay, well, it sounds fairly well researched, your position, so that's cool. Nice one. What about power? That's
power.
It's not the most exciting topic, but maybe it should be for a lot of guys with boards.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
What's important? What should people putting together their own pedal boards and stuff at home be considering? Or if they're getting someone to build a board, what are the important takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest thing is isolation. You need an isolated supply, because mains power is so different everywhere you go that what interference you're going to run into is not going to be consistent. So the more consistent you can fail-safe your board, the better it's going to be. So from my experience, the Chox power supplies are the best for isolation. Mm-hmm. That's my recommendation. I use them over anything else, and I'm a dealer for just about everything.
Yeah.
The Strymon ones also are really, really good. I've been using Voodoo Lab for years, and they're awesome. Most of them on the market these days are pretty bulletproof. I think the other big thing is that properly shielded cables is pretty important. I see a lot of guys talking about not running your DC with your audio and stuff like that, and I've just never had an instance where that was a problem, because I've always used quality components,
Okay, yeah.
So I think it's about just making the right choice first, and saving yourself the headache later. That's something I find is pretty useful advice.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's massive. And again, if you're playing out a lot, you're going to run into lots of different venues. Like there's venues I go to, I know the power is not great, and my rig always sounds bad in
Yeah.
particular rooms or pubs. Um, my last gig before COVID shut down all the gigs was in a pub in Sydney, and I was next to a wall of TV screens, which is not uncommon in in a lot of pubs. And man,
Yeah.
my single coil pickups were going nuts. And usually I don't mind a bit of buzz, but yeah, somewhere in my chain I've got some stuff which is inviting a bit of noise. So those little details, hey, like
Yeah,
the
well, that's right. I
power
mean,
and all that can make a huge
especially
difference.
with lighting and stuff in these clubs, lighting interfering with
Yeah,
your
yeah,
guitar, there's not too much you can really do about that in most instances, especially if you're using single coils, So
yeah, sure.
anywhere you can cut down on it with good cables and good DC supply in the first place is it can sort of be an exponential help, and they're not all created equal. A lot of the different power supplies, some of them have real advantages over others and
Mm-hmm.
drawbacks. I guess it's just kind of doing your research, But I guess if I had to throw one brand out there that's reliable in that sense, chocks for me are pretty much bulletproof. I don't think there's a supply on the market that does much better than they do it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Now, is there any sense in you running separate power supplies? If you got something really wacky, like I don't know, like an 18-volt something or other, or I've got a fuzz face on my board, or a fuzz face circuit that doesn't like anything. It wants to be first in the chain, and I'm thinking of just whacking a 9-volt battery on there just to separate it from the other guys. Any instances
Yeah,
where
well,
that's a thing?
it's funny you say that because I've just started building a thing that I call the B82 Res, which is an Ali G joke. But it's basically just a little unit. It's a 1590 enclosure the size of a Polytune Mini, and I've basically made that so it's two completely isolated 9-volt battery supplies, so that guys can just pop this tiny little thing on their board for such instances.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's tiny. It just runs off internal batteries, but you can switch it on and off and not waste your battery life.
Nice. Sounds cool.
I haven't really released them yet, but I've been building them custom for guys. I think I've probably done about 10 of them now. There can be advantages, but the thing is, the more things you're plugging into the mains, the more problems
Sure.
that creates in itself too. So
Yeah.
that it's kind of there's not one answer for that. It's case dependent. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, I build plenty of boards that have two power supplies on them, but they generally run off the same mains connector, and we just chain the supplies on the board.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Again, if things are isolated, it's probably the biggest thing. I think when you start running a wall wart and a power supply off a power board into the same wall outlet, it can get complicated and it can be hard to problem solve and work out exactly where the problems are coming from.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, it's really case dependent.
Yeah, sure. Pedals, you mentioned earlier, it's such a great time for guys who are into pedals, and it seems like it just gets bigger and bigger. And I'm, guys my generation, buying Boss pedals in the 80s, it's been a lot of fun ever since. It's just exponentially
Yeah, every day is
evolved.
Christmas for us, isn't it? You just jump on
Yeah,
Instagram
man.
and all of a sudden your head explodes every single day.
Have we reached full pedal saturation point, or is there still room for new stuff?
I hear a lot of opinions about this. I know a lot of guys, some of the guys I deal with in particular, talk about how the pedal industry's kind of exploded so much that eventually it's gonna tip over and then only the strong will survive, kind of thing. But I just don't think that's the nature of what it is we like about it. Me personally, I think it's just going to keep going. I think it might, eventually if there's 1 million pedal builders on Earth, which we're not far from now, maybe everybody's going to get a little bit less market share. So there might be more pressure on guys to be competitive in that. But I don't think it's going to tip over like a lot of guys say, and just, everyone's going to go out of business. I just don't think that's how it is. They're like basketball cards when I was a kid. There's always new ones, and every season they're going to bring out something else, and new trends are going to emerge. And I think if you looked at the pedal industry 20 years ago, no one would have thought it would have gotten to the point that it is now. So
for sure, yeah.
I think the only way is up, really.
Yeah, good times, man. Good times. Excellent. All right. Well, hey, Scott, so fun talking about this stuff. Yeah, I'm on Team Pedal as well, same as you, same as half the planet. So, yeah, it's always fun talking about it, and someone like you with such a wealth of experience. Good to hear your take on a bunch of different things, man. So thanks for the time.
No worries, man. I appreciate it. It's always good to talk.
Yeah, for sure. And what's the best way for people to keep up with Nautilus effects?
I'd probably say follow my Instagram. I'm trying to make a concerted effort to be more active on there, but it's always a time restraint for me.
Sure.
I've got my website, which is just nautiluseffectsystems.com. If anybody wants to, they can contact me through there. But Instagram's probably the way that I have the most interaction, I think. So.
Great. Yeah, it's a really easy way to keep stuff immediate too. So sounds good.
Yeah.
Man. Sounds good. Excellent. Well, man, thanks again, and let's talk again soon.
Unreal, man. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
All right, my conversation with Scott Salmon of Nautilus Effects. Always great talking with Scott. Good guy, very authentic, very knowledgeable, and really fun talking about pedals and gear and stuff. Is there anything more fun? I don't know. Don't know if there is. Hey, check out Nautilus through Instagram or head over to the website. There'll be links in our show notes for that stuff. Whilst you're online, why not go to guitarspeakpodcast.com. You can check out any of our previous episodes, buy a t-shirt, check out our free backing tracks, all that kind of stuff. Okie dokes, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for joining me on the Guitar Speak podcast. My name's Matt Wakeling, and I'll catch you next time. Bye now.